All right, cool. Just a quick mic check.
Hello, hello.
All right. You sound great. You look great. Here we go. Let me open up my water here. Give me a sec. I'll be right back. I gotta grab my water. I forgot it. Can't forget the water. All right. Here we go. And we are live. Hello, folks. This is Ruben Dua from the Connection Loop podcast. This is a podcast brought to you by Dub, the video communication platform. I am so excited today to speak to Don Batsford. We are going to get into just the future of so many things that we're dealing with right now. And I think it's really critical that you stay tuned for this whole episode and kind of, work through these things. I don't think anyone's the expert, but if anyone's near darn close, I think we've got the guy here. So, Don, if you could just give us a quick introduction to yourself and then sort of take us through what your kind of thesis is and some of the stuff that you're working through.
Yeah, TLDR on me is that I spent over 20 years in digital marketing. I got to experience everything from the dot-com boom to bust to now the AI shifts that we're seeing. I've worked half my career for myself, half for big companies such as Google. It's all been very exciting. And I think that brings us right to where we are in the present day. We're at probably the third shift that you and I will experience in our careers. We think about late 90s, get that web presence really coming into people's lives. Late aughts, it's the mobile phone. And then this third moment here, which is this AI. AI has been with us analytically and doing math in the background. Think about optimizing your route to work or checking your spelling. Maybe I'm telling on myself a bit.
Yeah.
But the generative AI has really brought, I think, to the forefront, to the zeitgeist, the fact that we all now are having our lives touched in even more ways by artificial intelligence. Very exciting. Very exciting.
Yeah.
And with that, and then you and I were discussing this earlier, I think given this third shift, this third moment, that we all have to now think about what's the human element to this, and not to lose sight of how critical people are to the future. How AI is not a replacement, but rather it's a multiplier. It's an accelerant for each of our own capabilities.
It's amazing when I think about this idea of artificial intelligence and how I sort of relate it to what I thought AI was 6 months ago, 12 months ago, just a couple of years ago even. I still ask myself, what is the true difference between artificial intelligence, machine learning,
Yeah.
a clearly defined algorithm, and then some sort of developed logic on the back end? And sometimes I see the terms getting so interchanged irresponsibly. Just because there's an algorithm with some logic and some sort of decision tree does not mean that that's AI. We've seen that in ad tech for years. People saying, "Oh, we use AI for conversion rate optimization," and it's not. It's logic. It's almost like if-then statements. I'd love to get your take on this to help us to really truly understand the difference.
Yeah, they are concentric circles. We should all just admit that language is an evolving thing. So even if we were to say automation is a big bucket and machine learning is part of that, that would be untrue maybe in the future, because the way people use words they change. So I don't know that we should get too fixed on one, but I will say that I have a magazine framed in my office, which I won't swing the camera around for. But what it is, it's from 1963. Kennedy is president, and it says, "Automation here, jobs go scarce." Panic for everyone. And I think when it comes down to it, is that automation here, the critical part of that is that automation term is something that's been a concern, but also a hope for a long time.
Yeah.
And if it's the Kennedy administration's thinking about it, then you and I are both admitting it is not AI in the sense of the way some people might be using those interchangeably. I
Yeah.
think we all, in the current kind of future that we're going to live in, AI will be the term, because I do think we're now in a true AI period, where historically that was probably aspirational. Things maybe more science fiction than anything else. And now I think we get to live that future.
Well, we're finally at the time where we can use artificial intelligence to generate a singing avatar of Marilyn Monroe singing "Happy Birthday" to President Kennedy himself. We are now finally at that point in technology. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to the fully AI generated podcast between the CEO of OpenAI and Joe Rogan. It was like an hour-long episode that was purely generated from AI. And when I say generated, I mean not only the voice, but also obviously the whole conversation between those two people. It's frightening. It really is. It sounds like them. The ums, the way that they communicate, it sounds very real.
I think there's an excitement here.
Yeah.
What's happening is that everything is changing, and that can be scary. That can be good. That can be bad. I see it as excitement, because out of the infinite, many things that were not possible before now are possible. So I think the dreamers, the kind of idea people, the entrepreneurs, have more tools than they've ever had in their whole career. I've had the chance to work at a company like Google now, and our CEO said this is probably the most important technology humanity will ever tackle.
Mm-hmm.
And he's right. The most important technology ever is a big thing, and we are at the precipice of a really bold new future. But we should go into it with responsibility and respect for things like privacy and the users of this. There's a lot of heady topics, but there's, I think, a general sense of excitement that we should all go into the future with.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think about is this idea that AI, how intelligent can it actually be after all, when the information is ultimately downloaded from human beings, right?
Yeah.
Now, this is not a diss to the entire human race. Pause. However, I have read many a science fiction novel where there is an advanced future race that comes at some point in X number of years that can levitate and communicate non-verbally and have higher levels of empathy or compassion and less levels of ego and all sorts of IQs that we can't even measure right now. So my question for you is, how smart is AI? Like if it's just reading at a bare minimum, the way that I might describe AI is that it's just read everything on Google and now it's just putting it together with some logic. What is the future of the IQ of AI?
So we're probably going to have a general intelligence at some point, like in AGI, where we have a quite capable system that surpasses maybe what you and I would even think is possible today. But I think you make a good point. The corpus that it's trained on is all things it could pull from, say, the internet, and it will make these connections between them. There is just a tiny bit of magic where even simple algorithms over time can make amazing patterns. There were computer scientists that even in the 60s would take small algorithms, in the 70s and 80s, and they would make amazing things that would happen over time. And honestly, some of them you can't just look at the algorithm and understand. You actually do have to play it out through time, because there are patterns that evolve in the long term. What I would say is there are bits of mystery, and this is the fun part, is that there are bits of mystery into some of the connections, some of the vectors that happen in these large models, where we don't know that there's I's to be dotted and T's to be crossed, because honestly, the cognitive load is too much to take all of human information put together. So it's not just one professor that you went in grad school you bumped into. It's not two, it's all of them. It's the silliest ideas, it's the most amazing and profound ideas. And it's not a panacea for humanity. It's not going to fix all our problems right now. But I do think of it as an amazing set of tools that we can now responsibly apply to some of the big questions we have. And I think that's been a desire of humanity for a long time. If you read anything from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, or to your point, flying saucers coming down, there's the big question and the big answer and about things. Well, democratizing that and putting that in the hands of the average person is pretty powerful. But it has a bunch of open questions that I think we should be excited about.
Right. I mean, this is all an exploration for us. I mean, the most tangible questions that I can think of that affect lay people, all of us, just human beings as a whole, is number one: is AI going to replace my job? Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing that I think that goes through people's minds. Right. The second thing that I think that happens is AI going to change my human experience? You know, if I can go to social media and I can watch content that's created by a speaking avatar, where the dialogue, the script is generated by AI, and the person looks the way that I want them to look, my definition of what a good-looking person is, or a professional person, and I continue to see that that content at a scale amount, you know, at some point, when does this content just become absolutely useless to me? You know, taking all the most inspirational, motivational, educational short phrases that's possible. At some point, when do I just tune out and say, this is not real? It doesn't really matter anymore. I want to go back to the flowers of nature. And then I think the third thing is, you know, is AI going to do something evil? You know, is there a malicious, sort of malevolent, you know, larger sci-fi type, end story here? I'd love to get your take on this.
So I can't know all the answers because I'm just one person who happens to be working in this industry. There's a couple things there. One is going to be, does that human experience still matter, the authentic? And I think it does. People still throw pottery. They still paint paintings if it's over a glass of wine. People still care about seeing concerts live. It's quite possible that you can go and you can hear your band over Spotify, or you can watch the video on YouTube, and you do not have to leave your living room. Yet concerts have quite contentious ticket sales, as people want to go out and have the experience. We have reward centers that are very human, and those will be part of our interest set. And so the experience that we sculpt for ourselves will have to play into the fact that we are still walking around human beings.
Yeah.
So I think the hand-thrown pottery will continue to exist, and that true experience will continue to exist, whether it's video, whether it's audio, or whether it's just interaction with people. So I think the advances on many things are very exciting, but it's a yes and. Improv troupe style, it's a yes and. So people experiences still need to be sculpted. And that's an important part for marketers and for technology people. I think the other question you have is, well, when does this automation reach a point where, you know, it has kind of taken up all of our current activities? I think what we should do is we position ourselves not in what was possible and the products and services that we could make previously. Imagine if I said to you that you and I were going to see a movie, a Pixar movie, or an action movie, and people said, how was the movie? And you didn't preference it with what you put in for variables ahead of time, because you just saw the standard one. It would seem quite quaint to people of the future. Oh, did you swap out Black Panther for Captain America as a protagonist? I just went with this. I went with the default. Oh, the default. Oh, that's very old school of you. Just let it render in the glasses for you real time there. You're like, I just let a director's cut. The concept that every experience might be hyper personalized for you. I had Fred Astaire be the hero of my Marvel movie. You did? Oh yeah. Why not? They have this back catalog. But if you could hyper customize every piece of software, hyper customize every piece of entertainment, every audio. I'll tell you, when I'm listening to the radio, it's not the radio, it's Spotify. And when I'm listening to Spotify now, a robot DJ walks me through my my list, and I wouldn't want to say he, it does have a male sounding voice. It will say, oh, you haven't listened to David Bowie in a while. This is literally an experience. Let's do a David Bowie block. That is a block of code that did not exist historically, because radios and DJs just tried to guess what the average was. That experience only ever happened for me, and they might not need to do it for somebody else. What I would say is that now multiply that times 10 or 1,000, where even the songs themselves, where I say, remix that song like it's house music, all the David Bowie songs. I could perceive that the world is hungry. We have emotional, we have physical, and tech debt that could be satisfied with new products and services that have never existed previously.
Mm. Now, what you're referring to is some sort of a AI narrator on Spotify. This is actually a talking voice. I haven't actually seen this.
Yes, and again, I don't work for Spotify, so I don't want to misrepresent it, but I'll say that when you are a subscriber to Spotify, there's a little circle, and it has a voice, and it reads automatically generated scripts for you based on the years of history. It will say, hey, we saw that you we're listening to music about this one theme. We're going to make a theme thing for you. Or you haven't listened to this in a while. It went so far, as to prank me on April 1st. It said, Don, we're going to play something that we know you love. This was a hit back in the 1100s, and it played some chamber music or something. And I said, am I being pranked on April 1st by a robot? And then it said, just kidding, and it moved on. But the concept that it was catering to a human, and the context was there that it was April 1st, and it sent out just for me in that moment, that kind of joke. And it might have been a common joke, but the fact is that you can see the beginning of hyper-personalized content. And I would expect that most products will not be static moving forward. And when we're to a point now where software is that it could be so customized. You bought a car recently. You probably got a choice of colors. The colors were something that somebody decided. I would argue that the paint on the outside, even what the graphics on the outside, should be able to be customized based on who you are, where you are. It should be contextually aware. If you're looking for a car, it should be able to flash. I mean, there's so much need for software, services, and that's a product that exists, color changing cars. The robot DJ, the concept of personalized movies. Now, there's tons of human involvement in this. And from the conceptualization to the coding, to the proof of concept, to the editing, at no point, and you know better than I about 90% of these production things, at no point do I assume that humans aren't needed more in these industries. What I'm saying is that the possibilities, the vista blows wide open. And honestly, we have kind of a burden of choice moving forward more than anything else.
Well, it's interesting. I did this YouTube video, and it was pretty successful. A lot of people enjoyed watching this video. It got to like 30,000 views pretty quickly. I recall this, and it was on AI video editing using Google Photos. And I'm a huge fan of Google Photos, and I've been a very early adopter in the technology. And just this is just I'm not paid to say this, but I think everyone should have a Google Photos account. And the reason why is because Google has been using AI technology to do facial tracking and contextual tracking on your photos. Now, I understand that there could be some privacy issues, and maybe you're not a fan of that. And if you're not, that's totally fine. Just ignore this for just a second. But anytime I want to search for any photo that I've taken in the last 20 years, basically, it's going to scan through all of them, including some of the scanned photos that I've done from my childhood photo portfolios, and it's amazing, right? So if you start to upload videos to Google Photos, there's an option to automatically generate an AI video. And I remember seeing this, and it's been many years since I first learned about this and did this video. And when I first generated the video using AI technology to basically select certain cuts from a number of videos, add music, and then build some sort of a loose narrative for this, I was blown away. I was like, wow, this is the future where we can take a massive aggregation of data, 1,000 photos from a photo album, a million bits of data from God knows how many sources, and then to parse it down into something that's actually palatable. And I'd love to sort of frame this as a question for you: is the more technology we get, also the more information and the more content that we get. So at some point,
100%.
human beings have a great tendency just to shove stuff out and to just say, I'm going to put my blinders on and I'm going to not pay attention to this anymore, right? Whether it's emails or advertisements or noise, right?
Yeah.
How are
Yeah.
we going to find our balance? How are we going to find our balance so that we can have the equivalent
Yeah.
of, AI video editing, so that we don't have to go through 1,000 videos from our trip to France and actually spend the time to edit them? Because who's going to want to do that in the future?
So first of all, Google Photos is amazing. It has over 1 billion users for a reason. One of the things I like to do on my team is when it's someone's birthday, I click on an icon of their face, select all of the pictures I've taken of them over the last year, share a link to them and say, happy birthday. Here are some of the highlights of the last year, which is fun and not as heavy a lift as it used to be, flipping through the box and cutting them out and pasting them to a scrapboard. I might be aging myself there a little bit on that. That being said, to your point, is that how do we take this kind of this ability to do heavy lift things and put them out such that we cut through what could potentially be an overproduction of content? And I think there's two fronts. There's the general and then there's the marketing. You mentioned both. So in general, I think what we need to be open to is the fact that we are going to have hyper personalized experiences. The algorithms, we will need to whisper them to. As people, if you have a feed, you need to whisper to that. You need to up and down vote. You need to subscribe and unsubscribe. And you need to provide a feedback loop, because data is coming in and you need to align it to something. And without alignment, most AIs in general will just make their best guess. But inferences are really hard for robots because they don't have all of the details. If you can give it one shot, two shot, some amount of alignment, then it starts to understand. So my suggestion in general would be to whisper to algorithms. You mentioned in marketing, I think one of the things we're increasingly asking is to go towards AI solutions so that we don't have to be everywhere. Let's be in the right place at the right time with the right user, with the right message, and value that as something you want to be part of or not. And sometimes it's going to require you to not be there. As a marketer, do value-based bidding, cast a wide net, but make it be where you're thinking about maybe what they've done down there in an anonymous, privacy-safe way, so that you don't have to be there, or you do show up when it's necessary. So these AI-driven marketing solutions, I think, increasingly allow us to be mindful of the user first, and be there when it's useful. So it's actually content.
Mm-hmm.
And even that requires algorithm AI whispering. It's funny, I've been talking about AI whispering now and then for the past couple of years. I saw a job for AI whispering listed recently within the last 3 weeks. It didn't pay bad. So I'm glad that AI whisperer is now a job title. I think that we all have AI whispering tendencies that we need to kind of cultivate and go forward.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, if you think about the fact that the creative will be customized, the experience will be customized, we're going to be kind of giving it feedback loop. We need to be entrepreneurial as business owners, but also as consumers, because there's going to be companies that are going to make amazing experiences that you might have a small learning curve for, and they're going to be really interesting. The best example I could see from the last 40 years would be when you think about technology such as the internet, or you think about something along the lines of the mobile phone. Small learning curves, but amazing payoffs. And if you look at a small child, They think nothing of picking up a phone and playing a video game on it. And it's because that they just assume that that's a set of skills that they would need to have. And I think the same is going to be true with this in a professional and personal lives. And I won't claim to understand if it's the metaverse or if it's going to be some kind of interactive robot assistant, but I do think that we should lean into that future because it could be quite exciting.
Mm-hmm. Very well said. Now, one of the things that that I kind of work through constantly is where do we land with sales professionals? And let me give you some context for this.
Yeah.
So my company, we enable sales folks to use video to communicate. It's an asynchronous video platform, and it really helps to bring humanity back. And we've seen a lot of success with it. People keep asking us, what about these talking avatars that everyone's talking about? And there's a couple of startups that are doing it, and you know, we've seen the tech. It doesn't blow me away. It's not unbelievable, right? You can absolutely tell. You know, there's also deep fake technology, which we've seen that there was the Tom Cruise one and the Keanu Reeves, and those look good. They look pretty good. There's some production value into those. That's not a one-click situation. But my question for you is, you know, not expecting that you have a crystal ball on this, but at the same time, I'd love to get your insight, which is, you know, the purpose of a sales professional is to connect a person with a particular product or service to help them solve some sort of a problem, some sort of a need in their life, right? And that without salespeople, we can't get to those places often. The roof over our heads right now, the car that we drive, the life insurance that protects us, so on and forth. Chances are there was a salesperson that guided us there. I would love to get your take on, you know, for the sales professionals out there, what should we be thinking about in terms of where AI is going to take us? How can we secure our job? What are some of the things that we can do to invest into ourselves so that we can make AI our friend?
So a couple things here. So one is that I do expect there'll be some shifts, but where I think we should all anchor on is that the human connection is important because these categories you mentioned are high consideration. And I think that's important. I don't want to say that people don't consider everything about their lives. Maybe they should consider some of the small choices like foods we eat and ways we have our cheat day. But I do think that the high consideration set, insurance, housing, the roof over your head, those are things where we need to address concerns we have. And there's research that goes essentially along the lines of that addressing concerns can improve conversion rates. The creative has to be amazing. You have to have a clear value proposition, but ultimately being able to make a connection to a person and say, I understand what it is that you're going through. That's a human connection. And that's why the phone is still so important. That's why video chats became so important when we couldn't meet in person. It's because people want to have this connection to say, I have hopes, dreams, aspirations, but they also have concerns they're looking to address. And the human connection is part of that. I will also say that over time, people become savvy with the technology. And I only say this because we should judge any technology with future eyes. I don't know if you play video games, but if you were to look back on, say, the first Mario Brothers game or the Sonic the Hedgehog game, at the time, they were probably the best graphics. And compared to Pac-Man, they were. Even some of the early CGI. Look at the first Toy Story movie. Groundbreaking. But if you look back at them with modern eyes, they are still fun, nostalgic, quaint maybe. The technology still was cutting edge for its time, but we've become so familiar with what it is that it doesn't pass the Turing test anymore. Is that when we examine it with the modern eye, we say, has this aged? Has this aged well? And as long as we understand that technology will be judged with much savvier consumers, I will say that the human being talking has been I don't want to say future proof, but once we got to color, you could probably show an episode from Sesame Street to a child from 1995, and they probably wouldn't break the kind of the illusion of that they're learning, because they would say, look, this is a person teaching about ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, because it has a timelessness to it. And I
Mm.
would just suggest that with any of these technologies, if we're going to be, I say, considering whether they have lasting power, is do they have that timelessness? Do they have the ability for us to make that interpersonal connection? And do they have ultimately, if there are, the ability to address concerns?
Hmm. Now, you mentioned the Turing test, and this is for folks that don't know about this. This is a test I think developed in the early 50s, where it's basically is the technology indistinguishable from human intelligence? So
Mm-hmm.
if we look at artificial intelligence right now and the way that it writes a script or the way that it might speak a voice, is that indistinguishable from a
Mm-hmm.
human being? And I would like to ask you this: is
Yeah.
AI right now does it pass the Turing test?
Well, it's funny because there's a big discussion about that,
Hmm.
and in many places, many things would pass certain, I guess, examinations,
Yes.
and you could, to a user, have it pass them.
Yeah.
What I would say is that we can't judge the current technology and the current users uh, without understanding that we live in a certain set of experiences.
Mm.
I believe that if you put me against a chat bot of the 90s, that I would know immediately that it was not a real person, because I would start asking it about turtles and the hot sun, and it would not have a good answer. I think similarly, there are skills that I'm not aware of now that future people will have, so that they understand the agents that they're working for, and the way that they are is just savvier. They're just future you and I understand more of the universe than present you and I.
Mm.
So it depends who's asking, what the exam is. I'll say the AIs right now are doing a great job passing legal and medical bars,
Yes.
and they are doing a great job writing papers, but they are not flawless in the sense that they are the only cognitive thing on the planet right now. We are still developing also. They will become better, and I think we should appreciate the fact that it's a very real possibility that they will be able to pass any Turing test. But at some point, where the value proposition is going to be is there a person there that understands the walking around? And if you just indulge me for just 30 seconds, you and I have a few things that are really unique. We have a curiosity, and we have an ability to go and satisfy the curiosity with a data set that is really, really hard for large language models to pick up on currently. And that is, if right now I told you it was raining outside, you could walk outside and you could hold your hand out and you could check. And currently, that curiosity and that ability to satisfy it, as an example, and it's a thin example at best, is harder for models. Now they can check the weather service and they can understand, and they probably can gather that together. But are the leaves dry outside right now? Do the clouds look like bunny rabbits? It's harder for these models right now to have full experience on humans. And you can see it happens in a couple quirky things. It's hard for them sometimes to infer the physicality of our world. And so there are blind spots. I've heard it referred to as Swiss cheese.
Mm.
It's cheese, but occasionally you hit a hole, which is going to be papered over at some point. But currently there are holes.
Well, every light source probably has some dark spots on it, so that makes that makes sense to me. Well, this was tremendous. What are some of the things that we can do to educate ourselves on
Yeah.
what the future looks like? Where should we be spending our time to really get ourselves acclimated and to be able to speak about this intelligently and at least stay apprised on some of the developments?
Yeah. So there are a number of wonderful podcasts, and thank you for being one of the people who's leaned in and technology and thinking about the future and is curious. I think you satisfying that curiosity is a great example of just why this additional data set that you have makes you a thought leader. And I would say there's a few things we should do. We should, one, lean into the new skills that as they come. I said this to somebody on my team this week. I said, we have all been AI whisperers our whole life. I said, the movie Karate Kid, that the student is waxing the car and painting the fence the whole day. I said, what if I told you you've been waxing car and painting the fence? If you've led a team, if you've been in a relationship, if you've ever mentored somebody, all of these things where you encourage, say, somebody who has an internship with your company, or somebody who is a child that you are trying to get something better, you have encouraged them, given them feedback. They are smart. The human mind is amazing. That is the thing that most comes into light with all of this, is how we have 7-8 billion large language models walking around every day with infinite capabilities to go out and explore the world. And if you have those skills already as a human being, you have the ability to go and work with these technologies as they become more independent and more capable and more understanding of the world. And I would say, as sales and marketing professionals, I think we need to make better ads. We need to be creative empaths. And so we need to think about that human experience and not just have a blanket average thing. We need to think about how can we be that creative empath and address the concerns and the excitement and the hopes and dreams of those around us. We need to be experienced sculptors. We need to think about what a person's going through and how to customize it just for them. And then we need to be whisperers to these AIs to help them understand what's working and what's not. That's going to be a data feedback loop. There's a flywheel that needs to happen there. They'll spin off and do other things. They're prone to go off on tangents. And last, I think the entrepreneurial mindset, this inventor possibility has never been higher. I don't claim I know what the future is, but I do know it's going to be different. And with change is opportunity, exciting. But at some point, it's going to be a challenge to the status quo in many places. And I think that we should all lean into that because it's coming, and we can have a much brighter future if we all do it with a positivity and agree that we can be better off than we were the previous day.
Yeah. Well, that's such a great way to kind of cap this. I mean, one of the things that I think about a lot is that I've noticed that because now there's so much technology around us, AI is changing the shape of the way that we consume information. A lot of people are going back to the more pure things of life, the more simple things of life, whether it's music or whether it's nature, or whether it's going for a hike, with your family, with your kids, going to the beach, watching a sunset. I've noticed that there's been this sort of swing of the pendulum. Live music is the shows sell out. Like you mentioned that the shows sell out like within a day or two now. Every single concert that I've been to, and I've been to a bunch lately, I had to buy them all within the first day to get the tickets. So it's a breath of fresh air to see that. I've also noticed that people are now also going back to spirituality. We're going back to early philosophy of what does it mean to be self-aware, and how can we contemplate our existence within the cosmos, and asking really important questions like this as whisperers, as developers of this technology, which is developed by humans. We all have a certain civic duty to guide it into a place where it's not about consumerism, it's not about greed, it's not about indulgence, it's not about taking things to extreme levels, to extreme unhealthy levels, but rather to help humanity to solve problems and to bring human beings together, and then take us to the next era of whatever's in store for us as a race.
I 100% agree. I heard an AI scientist the other day say one of the exciting things about this is optimization. And I think as sales and marketing people, we've typically thought of optimization as turning a knob on dollars and cents. But imagine if you could make everyone's life a little bit better every year. Wouldn't that be something really neat? If we could all align to that as at least a common goal, that we could lift everybody continuously up into the right, as in their well-being, as in what they're able to do in the world. That would be an optimistic but exciting possibility.
Yeah, radical abundance. That gets thrown out there a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, optimism, optimization. These are the things that we should be talking about. But I'm so grateful for you for joining me on the Connection Loop podcast, Don. I really appreciate the time here, and I look forward to hearing more from you, to following your thought leadership. I would love to learn where we can connect with you on social channels. What are some of the sort of pieces of content that you've created in the past, podcast or any type of YouTube video that you would want us to check out?
Well, people can connect directly with me on LinkedIn. That's seems to be the easiest way to for direct connection. It's Don Batsford. Bats is in baseball bats. Ford is in the car brand. And then also, I make it a habit of being in at conferences and doing keynotes, typically within the advertising or digital world. So if you do see me on the schedule, on the agenda, please swing by and introduce yourself after the fact. We'd love to hear your ideas and share your point of view.
Thank you so much, Don. Appreciate you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and hope you have a great weekend.
Thanks so much.